How's it going, family? It's XRVMG Podcast. We have another episode today, and today we have a special guest. Acclaimed writer, fantastic actor, one of my best friends for the past 7-8 years, Andy Dubitsky. Thank you for coming.
Cheers. For that introduction.
Take him on the road with you.
Absolutely, man.
I know you just came back from New York, right?
Yeah, about 2 weeks ago.
How was it?
It was great. I mean, it always is. Reconnecting with family, with friends.
Okay.
I got to go to my really good buddy's son's wedding. Scary that I have a friend who has a son that's getting married. The wheels of time just keep spinning. And I knew this young fella since he was, I don't know, early teens maybe. He's 31 now and married a wonderful young woman. Shout out Ryan Clinton, his lovely wife, and my buddy Steve, who's his dad. And that was great. And then that was the centerpiece of the trip. I got to see my mom, my aunt, my sister, my stepdad, some like real ride or dies from when I was a kid, and I got to go into Manhattan. My family's from Staten Island.
Okay.
So New York City, as you guys out there may or may not know, is very big, like LA. And so if you are from one neighborhood or even sometimes one borough, you may just stay there, for a while, like during a visit, or even if you live there, you may not leave the borough or the neighborhood for a while because everything is so centered in there. And but I did get into Manhattan. I got to go through some of my old haunts on the Lower East Side, some of the best dive bar hopping in the world, certainly in the country, and so that was great.
That's very true. What's it called? We went to New York. We've been going every year. We've been going back every year, right? My family's from the Upper West Side and then Washington Heights.
That's right.
The other day we were talking about where my family was from, with a guy from New York, but he grew up in Harlem, right? And he was like, the Heights. Back in the day, the Heights used to be crazy. And now, when it was crazy, I wasn't there.
Right.
But now it's like all getting gentrified.
So many neighborhoods in New York are now.
Yeah.
Whether it be Williamsburg, whether it be the Lower East Side. I mean, it still definitely has pockets of its original culture, or at least, 20th century culture. But a lot of Ukrainian, Jewish, Italian, Black, Puerto Rican, roots there. But there's vegan bakeries and, super expensive apartments and things like that, and hipsters. And so it's even more eclectic, I think, than it ever was. So, which is great.
Back in the day when, I keep on saying back in the day, I was there for
old.
But
Shut up.
Going back to
in the day.
2014.
Okay, I just want to ask you, how far back is back in the day for you? Because I'm going to tell you, mine goes further. So I just want to let you know.
Now, I guess we got some back in the day beef now.
I just want to know. I mean, it's funny because you said, it's a reference that comes from my culture, my generation, not necessarily yours. Because everything is regenerated. But what's funny, though, is, first of all, I ain't never been to New York. So this conversation right here, I'm in the dark.
We have to go.
No, it's fine. It's okay.
Man of your worldliness has never been to New York.
Man, I'm telling you, there's a lot of places I ain't never been.
You
But
got time.
the bucket list is thick.
You got a
But
lot of
anyway,
time.
but back in the day, I'll just give this quick little story about back in the day because my kids say, oh, back in the day. I was like, well, back in the day for me was when, wheels were square. So, I'm sorry. I don't know how far back that is.
Way back.
So
Flintstones. I'm just thinking of Flintstones.
the craziest thing is
Even their wheels were kind of round.
Exactly. The
the furthest I go back in the day is when I was 3. So that's 27 years ago. That's when I first went to New York. And then I went there at 4, 5, 6, 9, 12, 13. And then after my 20s, we've been going back every year. But when I was a kid, you used to hear pa, 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 pa. And then, woo, it used to wake you up. right?
Oh, I just saw that on TV. I never knew.
No, like that was like, and that's Upper West Side too.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like Manhattan was rowdy.
It was.
You know, you had to watch your back. Now, speaking of Manhattan and him, Mark saying he hasn't been there, we have to go.
Yes.
We have to plan a trip. We have to plan a
class trip.
vlog, and then we have to do the whole experience from the difference in like, you know.
You do. Unfortunately, you do.
And one of New York is a special place for me because it's got one of the most like down to earth, connected to the street spots to the swankiest spots in like a really close proximity.
Yeah.
You can go to like a super like in the wall type of, you know, bar to like you can go to, you know, John Wick's concierge.
Yeah.
You know, like so it's like that. But like I said, now you don't really hear like the crime and whatever. It's still there, but it's, you know, kind of different, right?
Yeah.
The beauty of it is, like I said earlier, we went to Harlem, East Harlem, 122nd Street. There's an Italian restaurant called Sotto Casa. Now, shout out to Sotto Casa, and I want a sponsorship because I'm shouting you guys out, okay? 122nd Street, East Harlem, New York. There's a pizza place called Sotto Casa. It is the most beautiful pizza place I've ever been in.
Yeah.
We spent 6 hours there.
Wow.
My whole I called my whole family, and we had a great dinner. But it was not heavy. Now, the first time she went to New York, backstory, she had a little bit of anxiety and everything when I met her.
Who's she?
Sonia.
Okay.
My woman. Or should I say one of my bitches? Because it's...
Oh my God. Blooper reel.
This has been great. No,
I was not ready for that.
Thank you
At
so
all.
much.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you so much, everybody. All the listeners. All the, all the viewers that are watching.
Were you ready?
no.
Okay.
Not even close.
Thank you, all
Not
the
even
viewers
close,
that are
man.
watching, because next week, this won't be happening no more, okay? But back in the day, Sonia had a little bit of anxiety for crowds, so I was like, okay. One of my methods for taking that away was obviously recognizing the fact that she got, you know, anxiety around people.
Sure.
But the other thing was very discreetly, exposure therapy worked for her. So she didn't know how to even like, you know, be around people. I took her to New York. Now, I'm like, you're gonna be around
jumping
people.
in the deep
Yeah,
end of
like,
the pool.
I mean,
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
the most miraculous thing happened. She actually loved it. She loved it. And then I didn't know this. I think she's very beautiful, but women got their own, you know, ideas about themselves. Like, you know, I wish I
different.
looked
Men and
better
women
and,
look
you
at
know,
each other
whatever.
differently, yeah.
She was eating more. She was losing weight. She was getting more fitter, and she felt better.
Wow.
Because I guess, you know, part of it's because we got family over there too, you know, but how we can, you know, get around, it's so easy to get around. You have to still watch your ass.
And you walk everywhere. You have to walk fast. It's one of the hardest adjustments. It's still hard. After 14 years here, how slow people walk drives me crazy. I have to be like, oh God, like don't hit this guy with the car because it drives me nuts. They walk across the street like this.
We're
Boom.
slow. We're slow.
I've never seen anything like that. You get turned into a bowling pin in New York City. You walk across the street like
Bowling
that.
pin.
People will scream at you.
Yeah, they'll look at you. They'll pass and look at you like, the fuck is you doing?
Yeah,
like, you know,
exactly.
like they're like straight out like that, you know?
It's so different.
So just so that we can give some more context, I want to, you know, dive into the differences of the cities, right? Because
Sure.
he's a Pasadena native, grew up in Pasadena.
Beautiful.
I grew up in Japan. You grew up in New York, but we're all in LA.
Right.
So I want to compass it to, you know, coming back to LA. What's the biggest difference in the cities that you know from living here to New York? What's the biggest difference that you feel?
Off the top of my head, like you said, the car culture, the necessity for an automobile. Now, I'm from Staten Island, and we have the least amount of reliable public transportation. Staten Island doesn't have a subway. We were going to get one in the early 1900s, actually. They had started demolition on an underwater subway from where the Staten Island Ferry is to Manhattan. This was like in 1920. They were going to dig literally under the New York Bay and have a subway. The story is they realized they didn't really have the technology to do it, and they just abandoned it. You know, I guess, I mean, doesn't London have that connects France, right?
Yeah.
I believe, and under the English Channel. Excuse me. And so Staten Island has one train that runs from the northern end of the island to the southern end, and a lot of buses, a lot of city buses. But other than that, it's a car culture. So the similarities with Staten Island and LA in that way, but the rest of the city is just hyper connected with trains and walking. And it's funny, like Manhattan, it's got over 1 million people. It's like the Mecca of the country. Some people argue the world. And yet it's a pretty small island. Mm-hmm. You can walk, you know, a half hour in Manhattan. I mean, you can go from downtown to Midtown in a half hour by walking. So that connectivity with whether it be subways, the availability of cabs, I guess it's more Uber now. But there are a ton of Uber drivers in New York. But when I was a kid, it was yellow cabs. And they would just, in perpetude, they would just come. So you could just jump in and out of cabs. Can't tell you how many times I'd be socializing in Manhattan. You just sort of ring, jump in a cab, take it 3 blocks, jump out of a cab. This place isn't really happening. Let's jump in a cab. Let's go down, you know, across town or something. You know, it was like you said, the speed of transportation. I mean, there's many differences, but that's like the biggest, you know, the biggest one for me is just that how Los Angeles without a car, you got problems. You got problems in LA. I mean, it's so expansive. It's such a massive city. It's so sprawling.
I'm just gonna add, basically, I don't understand why we don't have that kind of system here. Considering, I mean, I guess when they created the city, they wasn't thinking that far out.
Well, what I've heard is that in the 50s they wanted to revolutionize the train system. Los Angeles in the early 20th century, I think, had the most trains of any city in the United States, maybe the world. Wow. Fact check me, totally fact check me, but I know it was up there.
So
like
there
was tons of trains, rail systems that connected the country. I believe in the 50s, the oil companies squashed that because they were making money hand over fist. The post-war population boom, a lot of GIs came back from, you know, like from the Pacific Theater. They came to LA. They were Marines. They were Navy. I mean, there was hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. I don't know. They came back and they're like, I'm not going back to St. Louis. I'm not going back to, you know what I mean? I can get GI Bill benefits. I can go to school out here. It's open. It's liberal. There's not the same problems, you know, that we had in parts of the South or even like the North, and weather's perfect. And so they stayed, but so the oil companies saw tons of opportunity with cars. And I've just heard over the years that was one of the one of the reasons that a public transportation was never built, that they used their money, their influence to kind of squash those projects, you know.
So they were sort of like the big two, Big Pharma and NRA.
No, tobacco, big tobacco, whatever it may be. They had tons of money. Money's influence. Right. Can buy a lot of politicians with money, you know. And
does that happen today?
Oh, maybe a little bit. Poquito.
Harley.
No.
Right? Harley.
No.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Los Angeles has some, you know, public transportation. Especially from like, let's say They just made a train station right here.
I know.
It goes
I've
straight
actually
to
read
LA.
about it even. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I saw
like-
it a lot when I was coming here on the 210 and stuff. There's definitely a lot of.
It goes to downtown LA Union
Yes.
Station.
Yep.
Now I like Union Station because it reminds me of Grand Central.
It does.
Not as like nice as that, but it's still got its beauty.
It's got character.
It's a hub.
Now
It's got character. It does.
LA from like downtown LA to Hollywood, North Hollywood area, you could relatively, go across with public transportation.
It's the red line, right?
Yeah,
I've
red and the
taken that.
purple.
Yeah, the red and the purple.
Yeah.
I've taken it. I lived in North Hollywood, Studio City for a long time. So, and I didn't have a car for a couple of years, and I get used to it. It's funny. I was like, I'll go 1 week without a car, and all of a sudden I started learning even our somewhat dilapidated and dated transportation. I was like, wow, this is like cheaper, and I kind of get everywhere I can. And with the explosion of like the ride apps, I'm like, this actually isn't that bad. Like I lost weight. I was walking a lot. It was freeing. It was for the first time. I was already in my 40s, and for the first time in my life, I had a car since the day I got my driver's license. I had a car before I got my driver's license. I actually bought it, and for the first time in my life, I didn't have a car, and there was something very freeing about it. I get used to it. You know what I mean? So I learned the trains, like I said, learned the buses, learned how to get around, and yeah, even you could do it. Even in LA, you can do it.
But it was like riding a bicycle was something you were already used to. So it was nothing. I mean,
Yeah.
you got people now, they freak out. Oh, I got to take the bus?
Yeah.
Right. My kids, what? I take the bus?
Yeah, I know.
Whoa, time out, slow down, relax, take a deep breath. It's okay. but slow down. I mean, I had no choice when I was going. I mean, ours was the rough, tough, and dangerous,
Well,
which is the RTD. But
yeah.
and the thing about it was that's all we had. And then between that or it was my bicycle, so it was like,
Yeah.
you got to get where you got to go.
That's it.
And-
time to complain.
And if not, then you better get lefty and righty out and make it happen. So, those are the kind of things that, these generations don't really understand.
No.
They've been spoiled thanks to us parents. But I think, if when you have to do things like that, you're connected to where you are. Whereas if you just depend on whoever, you're not even paying attention. Ask a kid how to get where you're taking them. They don't know.
No.
What do you mean? I have an app. What do you mean you have an app?
Yeah.
I remember back in the day, it was the Thomas Guide. And you had to flip
Yeah.
it open, and then they did the page. Now you got to go to page 50.
Yeah.
So you got to put the whole book, and then you have to map it out and look at this grid. And so basically what the GPS is now is basically it was printed out, but it was giving you something that you had to do. You had to make things happen. You had to be involved in it. It wasn't just whatever. And so